Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we're kind of flipping the script on how we think about failure.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of like a dead end, we're looking at failure as like a launch pad.
I like that.
Yeah, so to help us with this, we're diving into some really cool stuff from Atomic Habits, Black Box Thinking, Failing Forward, and a bunch more. Yeah,
Nice.
so from Psychology Today, Greater Good Science Center, all sorts of places. And basically, we're going to learn how, like, those really successful people, how do they actually use setbacks to do even better?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So like, if you're dealing with a challenge right now, maybe you're like recovering from something that didn't go so well, or even if you just want to like level up in general, this is going to be packed with some serious aha moments. I could feel it already.
It's funny how much people try to avoid failure, but if you look back in history, tons of people used it to get ahead.
Yeah.
They saw it as information, not the end of the line.
Right. Like they were doing A/B testing before it was even a thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So Atomic Habits. James Clear, he has this idea about small improvements, tiny gains, he calls them.
Okay.
Basically, 1% better every day means you're like 37 times better after a year. Like, imagine applying that to something you want to do.
Right.
Let's say writing a book, that novel you've always wanted to get out there.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a year from now, you could be that much closer just from doing a little bit each day.
What's really powerful about that, I think, is it takes your mind off that huge final goal and puts it on what you can do today. Clear is a big believer in systems, not just goals.
Right.
Like he says, you don't reach the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. Like all those times I set a goal, I'm going to run a marathon.
Yeah,
And then, life happens, no consistent habits, and
yeah.
it just doesn't happen.
That's exactly it. It's not that one big push, it's those everyday things, those tiny changes.
Right.
And Clear takes it even further with this idea of like identity-based habits. You decide who you want to be and then you prove it to yourself little by little.
So instead of saying, I'm going to eat healthier, you say, I'm the kind of person who makes healthy choices.
That's it.
And then every time you pick the salad, not the fries, you're like voting for that identity,
Powerful,
right?
right?
That is a powerful shift. Okay, but what about when those choices, don't work out like we hoped?
Yeah.
What about those oops moments? How do we deal with those?
That's where black box thinking comes in. Matthew Syed, he uses aviation as an example. Like they study failures really carefully to make things safer. Did you know that more people die from medical mistakes than car accidents?
Really? I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, it makes you think, right? And it shows how important this black box thinking
Yeah,
is, not just for doctors and pilots, but for all of us in everyday life.
right.
It's about looking at our setbacks, honestly, no excuses, learning from them instead of pretending they didn't happen.
That makes me think about how often we blame other people when things go wrong.
Yeah,
But then we hide our own mistakes.
right.
So it's like we're trapped. We never really learn and get better.
That's it, that closed loop. Not wanting to see our own mistakes, that's what stops us from improving.
So we need to be willing to talk about our failures.
Yes, not to feel bad about them, but to see what they can teach us.
Okay, so instead of I messed up, it's what can I learn from this?
Exactly. And that takes us to another idea from Syed, the guided missile approach.
Okay.
Instead of aiming for one fixed target, like a regular missile, we should constantly adjust based on what we learn, like a guided missile.
Oh, I see. Like agile methodology, iterative design.
That's it. Same principle, but for life in general.
Right.
And that leads to another key point, marginal gains. We need to try small changes and see what works. It goes back to those 1% improvements from Atomic Habits.
Right, right.
Small tweaks, when you look at them closely, can lead to huge progress over time.
So it's not just trying new things, it's being like a scientist about your own life.
Yes.
Observing, experimenting, analyzing. I love that. But, a lot of us, I think we get stuck on the fear of failing, looking bad.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we get past that?
That's where John C. Maxwell's book, Failing Forward, comes in. He really makes the point that what separates successful people isn't that they never fail, it's how they react to it.
Right. Do they let fear stop them or do they use it to get stronger? I think we've all felt that, like being frozen by the thought of messing up.
It's so common, but Maxwell, he wants us to think of failure as a stepping stone, a necessary part of getting where we want to go.
Okay, I'm with you so far, but how do we actually do that? Like, how do we go from failure is scary to failure is a stepping stone?
Well, first, we need to get that feeling bad after a failure is normal.
Okay.
It pushes us to find better ways to course correct. It's not about avoiding bad feelings, it's about dealing with them in a healthy way.
So not numbing ourselves with Netflix or whatever, but actually facing those feelings, but in a good way, of course.
Exactly. Find that balance where you acknowledge the discomfort, learn from it, and then use that to move forward. And one really powerful way to do that is turning failure into a growth story.
Like, instead of I bombed that presentation, it's more like, okay, that presentation didn't go how I want it, but I learned some important things about public speaking, and next time I'll be even better.
That's exactly it. Reframing failures as stepping stones and telling those stories to others, it can inspire people and it helps you succeed in the future.
It's like taking those motivational quotes we see everywhere and making them real. Okay, I'm starting to see how all these ideas connect. But what about those times when it's just failure after failure and you just want to give up? How do we build up that resilience to keep going?
For that, we should look at this article from Psychology Today about building a Teflon mindset.
A Teflon mindset. Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more. So this Teflon mindset, it's about negativity not sticking to you, right? Like some kind of mental shield to block out all the bad stuff.
That's a great image. Yeah, it's about building up that inner strength so you can bounce back from setbacks without letting them throw you off course. And this article, it gives some pretty practical tips for how to do that.
Okay, I like practical. What are they? Lay it on me. I'm ready to get my brain all Teflon coated.
Well, one of the first things they talk about is prioritizing. It's all about focusing your energy on the stuff that really matters and letting go of the things that drain you or don't really fit with your goals.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're trying to do a million things at once.
Exactly. And then they talk about journaling, which can be super helpful for processing your emotions, figuring out patterns in your thinking, and tracking your progress.
I've tried journaling before, but I end up feeling like I'm just complaining on paper. How do you make it actually work for you?
It's all about asking yourself the right questions. Instead of just venting, try asking things like, what did I learn from this? Or how can I use this to grow?
Ooh, that's good. I'm going to try that. So prioritizing, journaling, what else?
Setting clear goals. Sounds simple, right? But a lot of people have trouble with this. It's about having a clear picture of where you want to go, breaking it down into manageable steps, and then making a plan.
So it's like having a roadmap for your life instead of just wandering around aimlessly.
Exactly. And then there's taking accountability. This is where the real growth happens. Owning your mistakes, no excuses.
That can be hard though, right? Isn't it easier to blame someone else or just say, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be?
It is hard, but it's so important for building that Teflon mindset because when you take accountability, you're giving yourself the power to make changes and learn from what happened. And speaking of empowerment, the article also talks about the power of mantras.
Mantras. Ooh, now you're speaking my language. I love a good affirmation. How do those fit into the Teflon mindset?
It's about changing that negative self-talk into something positive, turning those I can't thoughts into I will statements.
Like rewiring your brain for success.
Exactly. And then there's time management. It's not just about doing things quickly. It's about using your time to do the thing that really matter, that are in line with your goals.
So it's not just about speed. It's about doing the right things in the first place.
Right. And the article also talks about the importance of believing in yourself. It might sound cheesy, but you really need to trust your abilities, even when you mess up.
That's easier said than done, especially after you've had a bunch of things go wrong.
I know it is. But remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about knowing you can learn and grow from your experiences. And sometimes that means giving yourself permission to rest and recharge. The Teflon mindset isn't about being some kind of robot. It's about taking care of yourself so you can keep being your best self.
So taking breaks, doing stuff that makes you happy, that's not being lazy, it's actually part of being resilient.
Absolutely. And lastly, this article talks about positive distractions, not escaping your problems, but shifting your attention to things that lift you up, things that inspire you.
Like listening to music, spending time with people you love, reading a good book.
Exactly. Things that give you positive energy and help you stay strong when things are tough. But what about those times when the failure just feels so overwhelming? Like when you just want to curl up and hide from the world?
Oh yeah, we've all been there. What do you do then?
That's where this article from Very Well Mind on dealing with those feelings of failure comes in handy. It reminds us that it's okay to feel those tough emotions. Sadness, disappointment, even anger, they're all normal reactions to setbacks.
It's like giving yourself permission to feel those things instead of trying to push them away.
Exactly. The important thing is to acknowledge those feelings without letting them take over. And the article talks about the importance of self-care, not just bubble baths and face masks, but taking care of your whole self physically, mentally, emotionally. It's things like eating healthy food, getting enough sleep, doing things that bring you joy and peace. And it also talks about the power of connection. When you're struggling, reach out to your support system.
I think we forget how much just talking to someone can help, whether it's a friend, family, or a therapist. Just having someone listen and say, yeah, that's tough, can make a big difference.
It really can. And if you're stuck in that loop of negative self-talk, the article suggests challenging those thoughts. Ask yourself, is this even true? Is this helpful? What proof do I have?
It's like putting those negative thoughts on trial.
Exactly. And a lot of times when we really look at those thoughts, we see they're based on fear and insecurity, not on reality.
So instead of I'm a failure, it's more like, okay, I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean I'm a failure as a person.
Right. And it's also important to focus on your strengths. When you're feeling down, it's easy to fixate on your weaknesses. But reminding yourself of your talents, skills, and accomplishments can help you feel more confident and motivated.
Like making a highlight reel of all the things you've done well to remind yourself of what you're capable of. But what about when the negativity is coming from other people? When people are criticizing you, doubting you, or trying to bring you down?
That's where this article from Greater Good on learning from failure has some good advice. They suggest watching how other people fail, getting from distance from your own failures, and telling your failure stories to turn them into growth stories.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. How can seeing other people fail actually help us?
It can give you a whole new perspective. You see how others handle similar situations, and you can learn from their mistakes without all the emotional baggage that comes with your own. It's like watching game film, seeing how other players dealt with the same plays.
I like that analogy. It takes some of the pressure off.
Exactly. And then there's the idea of getting some distance from your own failures. This could mean trying to see the situation from someone else's point of view or writing about it as if it happened to a friend.
So instead of, ugh, I can't believe I do that, it's more like, okay, if this happened to my friend, what would I tell them?
Exactly. It helps you separate yourself from all the intense emotions and look at things more objectively.
That's a great idea. And then there's this idea of sharing our failure stories. It seems counterintuitive, but I'm starting to get why it could be powerful.
It is. Research shows that if we reframe our failures as learning experiences and share those stories, it can actually help us succeed in the future. It's about taking responsibility for our mistakes, figuring out the lessons, and then using those lessons to help ourselves and other people grow.
So instead of hiding our failures, we embrace them, learn from them, and use them to connect with others. It's like we're building a giant library of wisdom, where every failure becomes a valuable resource for everyone. But sometimes, it's not easy to figure out those lessons, is it? Especially when the failure catches us by surprise.
You're absolutely right. This Greater Good article points out that failures often mess with our expectations, which can make them hard to understand.
It's like we have this story in our heads about how things are supposed to go, and when real life doesn't follow the script, it can really throw us off. So how do we deal with that? How do we make sense of those unexpected failures? So we're talking about those times when a failure, it's like a total surprise, right? It knocks you off your feet. What helps you get back up again?
Mindfulness can be really useful in those moments. Like, instead of pretending it didn't happen or trying to bury it, you can actually use that surprise as a way to pay attention.
Okay.
Be present with that uncomfortable feeling. Really look at what happened and why.
So you turn that ouch that didn't go as planned into a, that's interesting. What can I learn from this?
That's a great way to put it. You go from reacting to reflecting.
I like that.
And the article also talks about trying to lighten your mental load as much as possible when you're dealing with a failure. Don't try to do a million things at once when you're also trying to make sense of what went wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like when you're exhausted and you're trying to solve some complicated problem, your brain just can't do it.
Exactly. And that's where things like journaling and taking notes can help.
Oh, okay.
When you write down what you've learned, it frees up space in your mind and makes it easier to actually use those lessons later.
It's like creating your own personal cheat sheet for success based on your own experiences. And, speaking of success, I think we need to remember that success and failure aren't opposites. They're both part of the same journey.
That's so true. Like John C. Maxwell says, failure isn't a comma, it's a semicolon. It's a pause, a chance to think, and then you keep going.
That's a great quote. And the best part about all this, about learning to see failure differently, is that it gives you the courage to take risks, to try new things, knowing that even if you mess up, you'll learn and grow from it.
It's about embracing the entire journey, the highs and lows, knowing that each step, even the stumbles, brings you closer to where you want to be.
So what does all this mean for you listening right now? It means failure is not the end. It's a chance to learn, to grow, to become even tougher on your way to success. It's about changing your perspective, embracing that growth mindset, and developing the skills and habits that will help you turn those oops moments into aha moments.
And don't forget, you're not alone in this. We all face challenges, we all make mistakes, and we all have the ability to learn and come back stronger. The key is choosing to see failure not as a loss, but as a step forward.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into turning mistakes into stepping stones, we'll leave you with one final thought. What's one specific failure you can reframe into a stepping stone for your own growth? Think about it. Maybe write it down in a journal. And if you feel like it, share your thoughts with us on social media. We'd love to hear your stories of resilience and growth. Until next time, keep diving deep, and remember, failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the process.